Things are not going great for the big league team, but man, there's a lot of hope for the White Sox farm system. And let's discuss possible better days ahead with a man who's watched a lot of White Sox minor league baseball on today's episode of Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan. I write for SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the fan side of the network, and also I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And also follow or subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast. Well, outside of the White Sox scouts and minor league managers, there might not be a man in North Carolina who has watched more Sox minor league baseball live and in person than Jeff Cohen of FutureSox.net. And he joins me today to discuss all the recent happenings at Charlotte, Winston-Salem, and Kannapolis, because let's face it, that's where the juice is right now for this franchise. And Jeff, thank you for joining me. So Matt Thaiss gets traded away. Corey Lee returns from the IL. Is there any chance Kyle Teel is on his way at some point this season? Or are they just going to preserve his rookie status for next season?
Hey, Todd, happy to be here. As far as Kyle Teel, it's interesting. Yeah, I understand the theory that there's a lot to be gained if he goes up next year and can be rookie of the year. That's certainly a huge incentive. But, man, the guy is just tearing it up right now. And I just wonder how long, if he keeps this up, can they ignore him, right? I mean, if he just keeps hitting well over 300 for the rest of the season, do you keep him in Charlotte that whole time? I think it's hard to do that.
Yeah, is there ever a time where you're watching some of these guys and you're like, what else do they have to do to get the call up?
Well, that was certainly the case with Tim Elko earlier this year. It's like, all right, we know who he is. He strikes out a lot and he hits a lot of home runs, and he's proven that at every level of the minor leagues. Let's finally see him in Chicago. And mercifully they did. Unfortunately, it was a quick stay, but I really deep down think he's going to be back up sooner than later.
Yeah, I hope so. How much have you seen of Drew Baker, and what can you tell of us when you've observed him either at any stops in the minors, as that's the guy that they got back in the Matt Thaiss deal?
I only know what I read about him today. I'm sure he came through Charlotte and was on the Rays, but he's not one of the guys, honestly, I really paid attention to. I guess he had 40 stolen bases in back-to-back seasons. If he's a Ray, there's a certain type of player you're getting. He's going to play hard-nosed. He's going to be fundamentally sound. But if he's a 280, 290 hitter with great speed and defense, yeah, there's a place for him. But my concern with the White Sox is this is a team that right now is 28th in home runs in the major leagues. There's just no power. And there'll be even less when they trade Luis Robert. And looking down the road to when they're marginally competitive, they need power bats in the corner outfields. Now, Braden Montgomery hopefully is one of those two corner bats. I don't know who the other is. I just don't know if a guy like Drew Baker is what you're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, he also seems more like a redundancy in terms of he's a good on base guy and he steals bases, but they've got some other guys down in the minors that like Dominique Fletcher and Corey Julks that could maybe possibly do the same. So I was kind of like, okay, I get he fits a profile. But could they have maybe swung for, like you said, maybe a power bat, maybe another pitcher or something like that? How has Colson Montgomery looked live and in person? I've obviously seen the highlights. I know Ian Eskridge is probably the next guy that's watched just as much as minor league baseball as you have. But how has Colson Montgomery looked live and in person since coming back from Arizona?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Ian, my FutureSox colleague. He and I have talked a lot about Colson and trying to parse what's different, if anything, about his swing. We're not seeing a whole lot. I think it's as much approach as anything, but he definitely looks so much more comfortable. He looks so much more confident, and the results kind of speak for themselves in that he's making a lot of contact, whereas he didn't before. I mean, before he was lost, he didn't look like he had any kind of approach at the plate, 2 or 3 strikeouts a game. it's really early. It's been 2 to 3 weeks since he returned, but it's better than I could have envisioned, to be honest.
Yeah, I hope they don't get like, oh, now it's worked and let's get him up. I would like to see him a few more, another month or two at least, to see, do some of these AAA teams get a little bit more notes on him and see how do we attack him. And then can he make the adjustment to the adjustment? I know there's not a ton of adjustments to the adjustments in the minor league level, but you would like to still see him maybe clear the bar after there's at least some notes on him, right?
It's interesting. Ian and James Fox, also at FutureSox, and I did a podcast last night, and we were kicking this idea around. And the consensus among the three of us was, if Colson can continue this, making the kind of contact he's making for another 3 or 4 weeks, then the theory is that the White Sox want to get him to Chicago before he loses it and falls back into some kind of slump, and then then there's no motivation to bring him up. So the feeling is, they're going to bring him up sooner than later.
Yeah, I think they've always wanted to bring him up,
Right.
no matter what. They wanted to bring him up in spring training, which I thought, I was like, okay, he had a good September, very impressive. He was good in the Arizona Fall League, but it's easy to look good in Arizona. Let's give him a few at bats, so I had no problem with them sending it. And I actually like that they, did send him to Arizona. There's nothing wrong with trying these new, maybe unorthodox methods, and that the Arizona Diamondbacks have done that before. So it sounds like they're listening to an adult in the room like Josh Barfield.
No, I agree. They're doing that on the pitching side as well, with Hagen Smith and Jairo Iriarte. They're both in Arizona, tweaking their mechanics. And I think that's a great idea. I think they ought to do it with Andrew Vaughn.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you, is he going to be able to revive his career? What did he look like over the weekend?
He looked lost. There was even a simple ground ball at first base that he kind of muffed, that it just looked like there's just no confidence. There's no positive vibes at all coming from him right now. I suspect he was probably still in shock this weekend when he first got to Charlotte, but there was nothing to be optimistic about last weekend, at least.
On the flip side, you talked to Tim Elko. It sounded like he was like, okay, I'm here and I'm going to hopefully get back.
Yeah. Tim's pretty unflappable guy. It was pretty telling that the first day that he could be back, I think they give the major leaguers a day or two to get down to the minor leagues, but he was there the very next day, and it was an optional infield practice, and he comes bounding out of the clubhouse, smile on his face, runs to first base, happy to field ground balls. It's just a delightful guy to be around.
All right. I call him bullpen Tim Elko. What does Edison Coffee have to do to get called up? What does he have to do? Because it seems like they will never call him up, and yet all he's been doing is he's been getting outs.
Well, I think there are 3 guys that I'd like to see up in Chicago. He is 1, Wickelman Gonzalez is 2, and Peyton Pallette, who just got promoted today to Charlotte, is 3. I was kind of hoping he'd go straight from Birmingham to Chicago and skip Charlotte. That usually doesn't pan out that well for pitchers anyway.
Yeah, so let's shift focus to the team's potential future superstar and some other happenings going on at Winston-Salem with Jeff, and that's after the break. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track, and that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center, and you can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. And I know my wife was getting stressed out tracking all of our expenses, but no more since we started using Monarch Money. We've been using it to make sure we can watch where we can cut on spending, things that we don't need, and plan out saving for retirement, which for us is coming sooner than we think. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. And welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, make sure to hit the like button on today's episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, Locked On White Sox is available on all major podcast platforms. So make sure to follow or subscribe on places such as Apple or Spotify. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me and here with Jeff Cohen of FutureSox.net. And Jeff, I know you do good stuff for FutureSox.net, but you also do some amazing stuff on Twitter. Where can we find all your stuff?
AAA Jeff is where you can find me on Twitter /X and also FutureSox.com.
And then are you still doing the podcast with Elijah Evans?
Yeah, we are. Yeah, every Monday night.
Yeah,
Almost.
I love Elijah Evans, and it's great that I've now finally able to talk to you. And one of the reasons why I love having the Future Sox guys on is because that is where the hope is. I mean, right now the big league level not going so well. But, you're seeing Chase Maedroth, you're seeing Edgar Caro starting to contribute, even Miguel Vargas, and there's going to be a lot more on the way, hopefully. You did mention Peyton Pallette before we went to break, and I want to just circle back to him because at Winston-Salem, he wasn't doing very well as a starter. Then they make the decision to make him move into the bullpen, and it just seemed like he just took off from there.
Yeah, it was amazing. I can't remember the stats, but between Winston and Birmingham, I thought he had like 20 appearances with 2 innings or more and no earned runs. I mean, it was something phenomenal. And he's continued it this year. He's definitely found his home in the bullpen.
Yeah, I'd like to see him maybe be your traditional 9th inning closer, and then I like to see Grant Taylor, since they're scrapping the idea for him to be a starter, to maybe be that multi-inning, high-leverage guy that maybe even can get you a few saves. I think that would make just a tremendously lethal bullpen.
So is it your understanding that it's a done deal that he's in the bullpen going forward indefinitely?
It's not totally my understanding. What I think they might be trying to do is, it wouldn't shock me if they're trying to do what they did. Granted, it was left-handed, but it wouldn't shock me if they try to do what they did with Chris Sale and Garrett Crochet, because I mean, you can get them to the big leagues right now. I mean, Scott Merkin was talking about, he was so impressive at spring training that he thought, why not just have him break camp with the big league team? But they wanted to get him down to Birmingham to build up his arm. Speaking of at least getting to Double-A, Jeff, is there anything left for Brandon Montgomery to accomplish at high A ball, and when should he be with the Barons?
Well, that's interesting. On the one hand, he hadn't played competitive ball in over a year before this season because of his fractured ankle. So on the one hand, you're thinking, well, they just want him to get at bats. On the other hand, he needs to be challenged, and up until last week, he really hasn't been challenged in high A very much. So I don't know. It's funny. I remember by dumb luck, I ended up watching batting practice in Winston once with Paul Janish, who's head of the minor leagues for the White Sox. And I was saying, it's part art, part science, how you guys decide when to promote these guys. I really can't figure it out. And that's certainly the case with Braden Montgomery. Do you leave him there even if he's not as challenged as, you think he should be?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the point he should probably be giving him a challenge, because it's not like, I mean, to me, when you're facing, and you probably know more because you see it every day, or, you try to get to wherever you can, A-ball, you're still facing guys that might not even ever make it to Triple-A, whereas, so if he's crushing these guys, let's get him to the next step. And that, I would say, what is the criteria that does Janish have? Like, for example, with Kyle Teel, maybe one of the reasons why I thought that they brought him down, that they sent him to Triple-A to begin with, was, well, let's copy what we did with Adley Rutschman. You got Ryan Fuller, he's in the Baltimore system, and Adley Rutschman, I believe, had like 800 at-bats in the minor leagues, but now Kyle Teel, for example, has cleared that, has cleared that bar. So what is the bar? Do you are you following what Ryan Fuller is suggesting from Baltimore? That might be what they're doing is hey, we want to get him a certain amount of at-bats here, and here. But it's like, he is, when some guys are exceptional, like Harold Reynolds even said, and I know he can be out of, make these outlandish claims, but on MLB Network, he even said, Brandon Montgomery's so talented that he could have been at he might be at the big leagues by September,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I thought for sure, I said all along after the first week I saw him that he's going to end the year in Birmingham. It's just a question of how much time he spends there. And that could even be conservative, right? I mean, if he were to go there and dominate,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Sam Antonacci, Jarrell Perez, they have also been really impressive. I love watching those three when I watch Winston-Salem games on my MLB.TV package. But do they have the potential to beat out, say, Jacob Gonzalez, Rico Nishida, or William Bergolla as the team's maybe future at shortstop and second? Assuming, like, for example, shortstop, assuming Montgomery possibly gets moved to third or first base someday.
All right. Well, and Montgomery gets moved if Miguel Vargas stays at first, because apparently, he's looked pretty good at third. It's a nice problem to have. Those guys in Winston, Jarrell Perez and Antonacci, you weren't sure how high ceiling they were, but man, they're certainly proving us wrong at this point. I mean, Antonacci is. In fact, I think that's part of the reason that Winston is struggling right now. He's out with a broken finger rehabbing in Arizona. And you take that guy who's got a 400 plus OBP off the top of your lineup, and it just affects the whole team. And on top of that, you send Ryan Galaney and Caden Connor to Birmingham, and there goes all your protection for Braden Montgomery. So they're struggling, but Antonacci, wow, he's doing it all right now in high A. So yeah, I'm really anxious to see him go to double A and see if he can keep it going there, because that's often, where these guys are facing elite pitching for the first time and we find out what they really have. And Jarrell Perez, God, he's got this as of tonight, 9 doubles, 3 triples, 10 home runs. Wow. I meant to look online today and see if he was leading all of the minor leagues in extra base hits. It's got to be top 5, right?
Yeah, and not only that, I mean, he doesn't look like he'd be mashing, with a lot of power. He's not the biggest guy out there, and yet he's out there, making really impressive contact, when he hits the ball. And another guy that just makes contact, and he became my guy when I watched Winston-Salem, was Rico Nishida, but at least he can move, to the outfield. But Jacob Gonzalez, I still just cannot get a grasp on what is he.
Well, and then on top of that, he had 3 home runs last week. So it's like, okay, well, there's newfound power that we didn't really know was there. So again, Ian Eskridge was telling me yesterday that Jacobs is using the torpedo bat that the Yankees have made famous, and seems to be working based on 1 week at least. But I don't know what to expect. I guess it's a nice problem to have. There's so many middle infielders between high A and double A, with Bergolla and Jacob Gonzalez and Nishida, and as you mentioned, Antonacci and Jarrell Perez. And then you go down to Kannapolis and you throw in Javier Mogollon. There's some guys there. Hopefully one of them is going to pop and be a major leaguer.
Yeah, especially since they've been trying to replace Ray Durham since he left town in 2003. That's why I'm very excited about the collection they have, because they at least have guys that if you squint, you definitely see that, hey, they could be big leaguers. Now, I liked what I saw from Christian Opper at low A. Sounds like his first outing, though, at high A did not go well. What is this kid's ceiling, and can he possibly take over? If they say, Grant Taylor, you're our future high leverage bullpen guy, can you take over that hype spot as a potential great future starter?
I think he had 5 starts in Kannapolis, and I have to admit, what I should be doing is going and watching everyone pitch at least once, but I can't stop going to watch him pitch. It's just beautiful baseball. And I remember talking to him after his last start, in which he faced the Carolina Mudcats, who I think led the Carolina League in every offensive category. And he kind of admitted afterward, he said, I really had to pitch tonight. I just couldn't get on the mound and throw my pitches. I really had to try and get outs, which I think is pretty telling. That tells you how he just kind of cruised through those first 4 starts. He's really impressive, but, he's really young. This is his first year in pro ball. He's thrown 25 innings. The first start, it wasn't great in Winston. And then the next day they shut him down and skipped him for a week because they said it was load management. And I was pretty nervous because, they said the same thing about Mason Moore in Kannapolis. They shut him down because of soreness after a start, and now he's out for the year. So I was kind of sweating bullets. And I was telling Ian Eskridge yesterday, I said, I really, really hope we see Opera this week, and it's not this 4 to 6 week absence after just throwing 25 innings. And he texted me today and said he's scheduled to start tomorrow. So.
Oh, good. Yeah, because a part of me, when you just said that, I was like, okay, get him on a plane to Arizona, get him in that MRI, and then if not, let's work on his biomechanics because, again, I mean, when I know it's a brief, as you said, it's sample size, but you watch his stuff and you're like, wow, he makes that ball dance, and they need just as many, keep giving the waves of starting pitchers because some of these guys might not, pan out. Some of these guys might end up just as relievers, and you don't have an owner that pays for pitching. So that's why it's so valuable to get a guy like Opper to be another like bonus potential, stud pitchers. 2 studs are also at Low A Kannapolis that I want to get Jeff's take on just how far they can go in their professional career. And let's get that after the break. And welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, shout out to all the everydayers. I appreciate your loyalty. Please hit the like button on today's episode and recommend to your fellow Sox fans or baseball fans, friends, to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox, wherever they get their podcasts, as this show is available on all major podcast platforms. Here with Jeff Cohen of FutureSox.net. And again, Jeff, where can we find all your great interviews too? I really appreciate that you post your interviews.
Thank you very much, Todd. I'm at AAA Jeff on Twitter and FutureSox.com.
All right. Well, Caleb Bonemer starting out at Low A, bit of a surprise. I believe he, as we're recording this, he hit another home run today. What is Baseball America seeing that MLB Pipeline's not? Because I don't get why he's not already in the top 100.
God, he is so impressive. I don't understand why there's any controversy at all either. He has just looked so comfortable, and he's just looked like a pro from day one. And my gosh, I don't know if you've seen him up close or seen pictures of him up close, but this is not some scrawny 18, 19-year-old kid. This guy could play linebacker in college tomorrow if he had to. He's a big, strong kid, and it's been really impressive. I've been impressed with him playing shortstop defensively, and I've been impressed with his ability to get his bat on the ball.
Here's what I love about it. The pick of him too was, I have no problem that they went with Hagen Smith. They needed to get a replacement for Garrett Crochet. And also Hagen Smith has a very high ceiling in himself. So I had no problem with them passing on Jack Caglione, but I still wanted them to get a high ceiling guy. And lo and behold, they go get Caleb Bonemeyer in the second round. He's right there. I mean, that guy, he could be your Gunnar Henderson, right?
Man, I think I can see that kind of a ceiling. Absolutely. I don't think that's a crazy comparison. At this point, it's Low A, but boy, he's destroying it.
Yeah, and especially you give yourself some good cover too in case, Montgomery can't play shortstop. That's why I'm very excited about him. And I was like, hey, Baseball America can even see it. I don't care if it's only been a few weeks. The guy is definitely an impressive player. And he also represents too of like why, your first 150 picks are so valuable, because there's so many talented baseball players throughout all of America. I mean, you're talking about one of the best players in Michigan. Not many people think, hey, you can get a player out of Michigan, except for, Derek Jeter. So I'm going to accept George Wolcott may never be a high average guy, but I'm relieved. And how relieved are you that he's coming out of the season starting funk? Because the slugging percentage being down was what got me a little worried.
Yeah, I don't know if I share your optimism that he's coming out of things. He 2 weeks ago, he did tease us with 3 home runs and I think back-to-back games. But then last week it was more of the same. And it's funny when people ask me about him, I do see improvement, even though the numbers don't suggest it. I see much more competitive at bats, and I see him not being so overmatched on breaking pitches. He's not missing them by 12 to 18 inches when he gets 2 strikes. He's able to foul them off and fight, but he's still a long way to go. He's still not getting the bat on the ball near as much as he should. But we'll see. It's still early in the season. I'm just let's have this conversation again the end of July and see if he's showing signs.
Is there something that you're seeing that may be off? Is the swing a little long, or is it just the breaking balls? And now, maybe that he's been at Kannapolis for an entire year. A lot of these teams at least have a little bit of note on them to, hey, here's how we should attack them.
Last year, I thought it was just he was so overmatched with breaking pitches that I thought every time someone threw him a fastball, he destroyed it, or it seemed like he destroyed it. So they just started going more and more breaking pitches, and he just was just in way over his head. But he told me he worked on that all off season, and I see progress. I just don't see the results.
All right, Javier Mogollon, you just already mentioned him in the last segment. What gives him the chance to get to the big leagues? Because it sounds like he is probably he could be one of their international free agent signing success stories, which they haven't had a lot of recently.
Yeah, he has been real impressive. He's kind of cooled off a little bit. I think he had a mild hamstring pull. I think he told me, but he's been really hitting the ball hard. And in Kannapolis, it's hard to drive the ball. So yet another really impressive middle infielder. The rap on him was, he's got big power, but he also has a ton of strikeouts. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but his strikeout and walk numbers are really reasonable this year.
Yeah, I mean, but hey, as long as he hits, home runs. Another guy that really just stood out for me, I don't know if he's going to do anything, but Abraham Nunez, I just seem to like his physical profile. Even though I'm like, when I saw it, I'm like, wait, he's listed at 6'2". I mean, he looks like he's like 6'5", 6'6" out there.
Yeah. And he just joined the team maybe 4 weeks ago, and got off to a little bit of a slow start. And I asked Chad Pinder about him, and Chad said, I saw him in instructs, I saw him in spring training. He's just an excellent defensive outfielder. And these last 2 weeks, the bats heated up. I think he's been up in the upper close to between 280 to 300. So he's starting to hit the ball, and he was a really highly touted, expensive international free agent. I think he was like a $600,000 signee. Is the number I recall. So it looks like he's getting comfortable as well.
All right. So which of the teams are you enjoying covering right now? Is it Charlotte? Is it Winston-Salem? Or is it Kannapolis? Or is it, hey, I don't care, I'm just getting to watch baseball and getting to see these guys start out their careers?
Well, it's a great week when all three of them are at home, and you have to wrestle with who do you want to go see, and I usually base it on who's pitching. I will say, by far, the team I've enjoyed the most is Kannapolis, with an asterisk of up until this last weekend. And all of a sudden, Andrew Vaughn and Kyle Teel, Andrew Vaughn and Brooks Baldwin and Tim Elko showed up. Colson Montgomery returned. Kyle Teel was tearing the cover off the ball. Brown Ramos was even really hitting the ball hard again. And all of a sudden, Charlotte became a fascinating team to watch, because I tell you, Todd, I've never been so optimistic about White Sox prospects until this last weekend, when I saw all those guys in Charlotte, and they all were performing. I mean, they all were so impressive. So I would say normally it's Kannapolis because of all the interesting young talent, and we didn't talk about all the phenomenal young pitching in Kannapolis. There's another wave of good young arms coming up through the system in Kannapolis as well. But right now, it's hard to not be fascinated by what's going on in Charlotte.
All right, well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long, get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. I'll be back tomorrow to discuss how the Sox fared in their series with the Mets. Feel free to leave comments about today's discussion regarding the future of the team with Jeff Cohen of FutureSox.net. And Jeff, again, where can we find you on X, formerly Twitter?
AAA Jeff on Twitter and FutureSox.com.
And you definitely want to follow Jeff, because he posts all his interviews. He does great work. He, the guys love talking to him. So I really, get really well informed about the character of these players. So I really appreciate the work that you've been doing, Jeff.
Hey, appreciate it, Todd.
And you can also, again, leave comments on the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at Todd J. Dub, or at Locked On Sox, or you can email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Have a great day. I will see you tomorrow.